Verizon reported earnings today. What might our phones tell us about the broader economy? Also, Tesla shares fell another 3.4% today. What does that have to do with my Nvidia valuation from yesterday? Today, I'm going to tell you. Welcome to the Stock Sale Flyer. My name is Aaron. As always, nothing in this video is financial advice, and this is just my opinion. Let's go into the Verizon earnings from today. So the street investors were not very impressed. At first, when this thing opened, it looked like it looked better. I mean, shares were up initially, I do believe, before eventually falling as far as let's see, they closed down 4.67% on a stock that really isn't very volatile. Typically, this is a 0.39 beta stock that ended up down 0.467% on the day. But I didn't want to go through and break down Verizon earnings today. What I really wanted to think about and talk about is what's the broader economic picture and how is this related to that, or what might it be? Obviously, I can't predict where we're going exactly, but we can look for some indicators, right? So I got to thinking about our phones and some of the things we've seen around cell phones and sentiment recently. And this article from Reuters had a line in it that I found interesting. It said that, here it is. Customers are showing a clear preference for holding on to their phones for longer periods amid economic uncertainty and a lack of major new features, analysts have said. And that also got me looking into that Apple drop we saw earlier in the year, and how the thoughts of potentially having slower demand for iPhones in 2024 was a concern. That led to Apple shares dropping earlier this year. And I know a lot of that, the issues with the demand for that were coming from China in particular. But I got to thinking about, some of the things I was getting at in yesterday's video toward the end, and how we really should be looking this week at the earnings calls for signs of where the economy is going and where the market is probably going. Because if people are not spending money on their phones as much, these things that they use more than maybe just about any other device that they own, and if they're looking for ways to save in regard to cell phones, that could be a leading indicator for us that we're seeing some economic slowdown. I know the economy has been incredibly resilient to this point in time, but that doesn't mean that, eventually we're not going to start to see more of this slowdown that's potentially happening become more evident. So maybe, this is a leading indicator of that. Also, I'll be watching the rest of earnings this week and some of the other carriers that report. So like T-Mobile on Thursday. Are people switching to providers that have less expensive phone plans? This is something I'm wondering. I know that in terms of MVNOs, T-Mobile bought Mint out. I don't know if that's gone through yet or where that is and how that affects that company yet. T-Mobile's not a stock that I own, so I'm not super up on that or anything. But I know these bigger carriers own some of the smaller carriers, the MVNO carriers, but are people switching away from the bigger carriers or finding less expensive plans because of the economic conditions that they're facing? And is that a leading indicator for us of where the economy might be going in the grand scheme? As I said in yesterday's video, I'm also going to be looking for UPS earnings tomorrow. So what are the UPS earnings tomorrow going to tell us about the economy? Could it tell us anything? Are they seeing a decrease in shipping volume? Because a lot of the time, if there's a decrease decrease in shipping volume that can be a leading indicator for a slowdown in the economy. What about Visa tomorrow? This is one I didn't bring up in yesterday's video, but if people are swiping their cards less frequently, that could also be a indicator of an economic slowdown. So, I'll be paying attention to Visa's earnings as well tomorrow. And later in the week, the consumer discretionary. So we have Chipotle on Wednesday. We've got also some advertising-based businesses, which the advertising market is often indicative of how the economy is going. So Meta, Alphabet, Roku, a lot of these companies have a high amount of ad revenue. I'm also going to be paying attention to Comcast on Thursday. I'm not giving my full valuation in this video, but Comcast is a company that I do own, and I'm interested to see how their results are compared to T-Mobile's, Verizon's, some of the telecom companies. Part of, if I do a video on Comcast eventually, part of that discussion is how Comcast is more than just a telecom company. But I'll be paying attention to that earnings call pretty specifically as well. So these are some things that I'm watching as we go through the rest of the week, focusing on consumer discretionary, focusing on the shipping business at UPS, focusing on advertising spending. So how are these things potentially indicators of how the economy is doing as a whole? We also get Tesla earnings tomorrow. I'm very interested in these. This is one where, I've got the receipt from a few years ago, roughly 3 years ago, when I, told somebody that I thought, basically I'm paraphrasing, but I thought it was overvalued. And now the stock is lower than it was back when I said that. And it's starting to get to the point where I'm probably going to do a valuation on this one and look at it in more detail, because, I think it's getting closer to maybe being at a point where it might be worth looking at. I haven't done the full valuation yet, so I don't know that at this time, but just at some quick glances at the metrics, it's starting to look like something I might be more interested in. Not yet at these levels, I don't believe, but I'm going to be looking more for a buy price. Price to free cash flow ratio is still pretty high on this one, but there also is, it's a company where it might be more capital intensive at this time. From an earnings standpoint, though, it's starting to maybe look like something more interesting. I don't think I'm the only one with that sentiment right now. Don't know where it's going, not buying now, but might be doing some more research and doing evaluation soon. Maybe I'll do a video valuing Tesla this weekend. Let me know in the comments if that's something that you'd be interested in seeing. So Tesla down 3.4%. And I kind of led off saying, what does that have to do with my Nvidia valuation from yesterday? Well, a part of why Tesla is down 3.4% today is that, aside from the overall sentiment being bearish, they announced that they would be lowering prices again. So we're seeing their margins get hit to try to trigger more demand. They're having to lower their prices. This has been an ongoing theme with this company for a while now. And we're seeing that continue with Tesla. And this is partially because the EV space, they don't have the overall control of the EV space that they maybe used to have. And so if they have more outside pressure, if electric vehicles are becoming less popular, if people are moving to hybrid vehicles more, they've got to find ways to attract more customers, and that can include lowering their prices. But that affects their margins. They're going to have to do higher volume to go along with those lower prices. Even if you think the level of competition they face in the EV market is exaggerated, I don't think we can go away from the idea that they're, at least in the sentiment from a sentiment perspective, facing more competition from people looking at hybrid vehicles and things like that, having less interest in electric vehicles in general. Now, do their sales figures reflect that, or is that just what the market is talking about? I'm not entirely sure. If I do this valuation, that's something that I would be looking at. But that's something that if you're interested in Tesla, just from a conversation standpoint, it's not advice really or anything, but just conversationally, if you're someone that's interested in Tesla, looking at how are their sales numbers comparative to past years is something that I would maybe look at. Is it that the market was overhyping the stock too much before, or is it that it just wasn't worth it? And I think it's likely that it just wasn't worth it before. When I said a few years ago it was overvalued, that was the case. It still looks overvalued to me now, but not as much, not nearly as much, partially because the fundamentals of the business have gotten better, and also partially because, the price has come down on the stock. So those are some things with Tesla, some thoughts on this Tesla drop that we've seen. Now, what does this have to do with my Nvidia valuation from yesterday? Well, if you remember, one of the things, if you did watch that video, thank you. Welcome back. If you didn't watch that video, I'll link it in the description so you can check out my valuation with the full discussion. I'm not going to go through the full discussion again in this video, but you can check that out if you'd like to. This was updated as of yesterday. So the margins in net income, I said that I could see them coming down after the next few years because they're going to be facing increasing competition. And this is the same story that we're seeing kind of play out with Tesla. At least that's what the news cycles kind of said. They have more competition, so they're having to lower their prices of their vehicles to attract more interest. Again, whether that competition is coming from other EV makers or it's just coming from people being interested in other types of vehicles. You'd have to go look at the sales numbers to really see how much of this is the news cycles sort of, their narrative and how much of it is actually fact. I think that the story of having to lower your prices, which affects your margins, I think that is a story we could see repeat with Nvidia in years to come, like we're seeing with Tesla right now. I think we could see the same type of narrative come to be with Nvidia in the future that we're seeing with Tesla right now. And then you have to look at the facts of the situation and say, why are they lowering their prices? Is this just a narrative? What's driving the price decreases? But I do think that it's very possible to see those net income margins come down in the future years as we see more pressure on Nvidia's margins from outside competition and maybe some other factors. Is the business cyclical to some degree at least? All kinds of things like that. So those are just kind of my thoughts today on some things that happen in the markets and what it could be meaning for things as a whole and the economy as a whole. Thank you again for joining me today. Again, I'll link that Nvidia valuation video from yesterday in the description. I also did a Kraft Heinz valuation over the weekend if you're interested in checking that out. Please let me know in the comments if there's any specific companies you're interested in me taking a look at in more detail. You can find me on X or Twitter at Stock Sale Flyer. So follow me on there if you haven't done that yet. And let's start some conversations about some of these topics. And thank you again for joining me whenever it is that you're watching this video. Take care.